Story outline: Binary Hearts in a Quantum War Part 1. The Probability Engineer, main character. Zara Voss, a brilliant quantum physicist, working on experimental probability manipulation technology. Setting: Hidden research facility on Mars Key. Events: Zara discovers her quantum probability engine can create reality distortions that confuse alien targeting systems. She meets Marcus, a test pilot, during the first successful flight trials. Part 2. The Adaptive Fighter, main character, Marcus Chen, former racing pilot, turned military test pilot. Setting: Orbital testing platform and first combat engagement. Key events: Marcus pilots the first quantum-enhanced fighter against the Nexari fleet. His unconventional flying style, combined with Zara's technology, proves devastatingly effective. Romance begins to bloom between them. Part 3. The Reluctant Diplomat, main character, Ambassador Elena Vasquez, former military officer turned diplomat. Setting: Nexari flagship and negotiation chambers. Key events: Elena boards the enemy flagship to negotiate, accompanied by a Nexari defector named Keth. Their unlikely partnership leads to both political and personal discoveries. Part 4. The Quantum Entangled, main character, Keth Zilana, Nexari science officer who questions his people's rigid perfectionism. Setting: Joint Human Nexari Research Station. Key events: Keth works with Elena to develop hybrid technology that combines human creativity with Nexari precision. Their growing bond challenges both their society's prejudices. Part 5. Hearts in Superposition, main character, all four protagonists, Zara, Marcus, Elena, and Keth. Setting: Final battle and new shared colony world. Key events: the four must work together as the war reaches its climax. Their personal relationships and professional partnerships prove that love, like quantum mechanics, transcends the boundaries of logic. Part 1. The Probability Engineer. Quantum probability engine hummed with an otherworldly resonance in the depths of the Martian research facility, its crystalline core suspended in a web of electromagnetic fields that bent light into impossible geometries. Zara Voss pressed her palm against the observation window, feeling the vibrations through the reinforced transperistyle as equations danced through her mind. Like living things, probability cascade at 93% stability, she murmured into her headset, watching as reality itself seemed to shiver around the device. Quantum coherence holding within acceptable parameters. The response crackled through her earpiece with barely contained excitement. Outstanding work, Zara. The theoretical models are one thing, but seeing it actually function, Professor. Hendrik paused, and she could imagine him adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses as he always did when processing. Something extraordinary. You've essentially weaponized uncertainty itself. Zara smiled despite the exhaustion that weighed on her shoulders. After 18 months of near-constant work, the Nexari invasion fleet had been detected 6 months ago. Their ships arranged in perfect geometric formations that spoke of a species obsessed with mathematical precision. Every military engagement had ended in defeat for humanity. Their tactics, predicted and countered with mechanical efficiency. But chaos, beautiful and unpredictable chaos, might be the key to survival. Initiate test sequence 7, she commanded, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. The probability engine responded, generating a field that extended throughout the testing chamber. Inside that field, particles existed in multiple states simultaneously, their positions becoming uncertain, their behaviors unpredictable. The blast door behind her cycled open with a pneumatic hiss, admitting a figure in a flight suit whose easy confidence immediately changed the atmosphere of the sterile laboratory. Marcus Chen removed his helmet, revealing dark hair tousled by the confines of his gear and eyes that held the particular intensity of someone who regularly defied gravity for a living. "So this is the magic box that's supposed to save humanity," he said, approaching the observation window with the unhurried gait of a man comfortable in his own skin. "Doesn't look like much." Zara turned, noting the way he moved with unconscious grace despite the bulk of his flight gear. She'd reviewed his files, of course, former civilian racing pilot, recruited for the military test program due to his exceptional spatial reasoning and ability to think in 3 dimensions while pulling 7 Gs. What the files hadn't mentioned was the way his presence seemed to steady the chaotic energy of the laboratory. "Appearances can be deceiving," she replied, gesturing toward the probability engine. "Inside that field, cause and effect become negotiable. A targeting computer expects projectiles to follow predictable paths. But what happens when a missile suddenly exists in 17 different locations simultaneously?" Marcus whistled low, impressed despite himself. "And you think this will work against the Nexari? Their entire military doctrine is based on perfect prediction and flawless execution," Zara explained, pulling up tactical displays of previous engagements. "Every battle has followed the same pattern. They analyze our movements, calculate optimal responses, and execute them with machine-like precision. But precision requires certainty, and certainty is exactly what my engine eliminates." She paused, realizing she was lecturing again, a habit that had driven away more than one potential romantic interest. But Marcus was listening with genuine attention, his gaze shifting between her face and the displays as he processed the implications. "The test fighter has been modified with quantum field generators throughout its hull," she continued, calling up technical specifications. "When activated, the aircraft will exist in a state of quantum superposition. To external observers, it will appear to be in multiple locations simultaneously, following multiple flight paths that shouldn't be possible according to conventional physics." "Sounds like piloting it might be interesting," Marcus said with a grin that suggested he looked forward to the challenge. "What's the catch?" Zara hesitated, appreciating his directness. Most people danced around the dangers, afraid to voice their concerns directly. "The pilot will experience reality differently. Time may seem to move in stutters, your instruments will show conflicting readings, and your perception of space will become fluid. Some of our simulator tests have resulted in severe disorientation, but not you," Marcus observed, studying her face. "You've been inside the field yourself, haven't you?" She nodded, remembering the transcendent terror of existing in multiple states simultaneously. Someone had to verify the human consciousness could survive quantum superposition. "The experience is indescribable. You exist as pure possibility, aware of every potential version of yourself across infinite probability branches." Marcus stepped closer to the observation window, and Zara caught the scent of ozone and acceleration gel that clung to all test pilots. "When do we start?" "The prototype fighter is ready for initial flight trials," she said, pulling up the test schedule. "Tomorrow morning, if you're prepared for—" "I'm prepared," he interrupted gently. "The question is whether you'll be there to monitor the quantum field during the flight." Zara felt something flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with quantum uncertainty. "I'll be in the control tower, yes. The field requires constant monitoring and adjustment." "Good," Marcus said, turning to face her fully. "I fly better when I know the person monitoring my life support actually cares whether I make it back." Before she could respond to that loaded statement, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Emergency lighting bathed the laboratory in harsh red illumination. As Professor Hendrick's voice crackled through the communication system, "All personnel to emergency stations. Long-range sensors have detected Nexari scout ships approaching the outer system. We're accelerating the test schedule. First live combat trial will commence in 72 hours. Marcus and Zara exchanged glances, the weight of impending conflict settling between them. The theoretical had suddenly become desperately practical. 72 hours. Marcus repeated thoughtfully. "Think that's enough time to teach me how to think in quantum superposition?" Zara considered the technical challenges, the dangerous unknowns, the possibility that her creation might simply tear apart any pilot brave enough to interface with it. Then she looked at Marcus, noting the steady confidence in his eyes, the way he seemed to anchor himself in reality through sheer force of will. "We'll find out," she said, initiating the shutdown sequence for the probability engine. "But first, you need to understand what you're volunteering for. The quantum field doesn't just hide you from enemy sensors, Marcus. It temporarily removes you from conventional reality. You'll be flying through possibility space, where the normal rules don't apply." As they walked together toward the briefing rooms, Zara found herself explaining concepts that existed at the bleeding edge of theoretical physics, translating abstract mathematics into practical applications. Marcus listened with an intensity that surprised her, asking questions that revealed an intuitive grasp of spatial relationships that formal education couldn't teach. "So when I'm in quantum superposition," he said as they paused outside the briefing room, "I'll be aware of all the different paths I could take." "More than that," Zara replied, her hand resting on the door control. "You'll simultaneously be taking all those paths. The Nexari targeting computers will be trying to lock onto a target that exists everywhere." Part 2. The Adaptive Fight Earth Modified Falcon-class interceptor hung suspended in the orbital testing platform's launch bay. Like a predator caught between dimensions, Marcus Chen ran his gloved hand along the fighter's hull, feeling the subtle vibrations from the quantum field generators embedded beneath the adaptive armor plating. Unlike the sleek, symmetrical craft he'd flown in civilian racing, this machine seemed to shimmer with barely contained possibility. "Quantum field generators are showing green across all systems." Zara's voice crackled through his helmet comm, warm and reassuring despite the technical distance between the launch bay and the control station. "Neural interface is calibrated to your specific brainwave patterns. How are you feeling?" Marcus sealed his helmet and began the pre-flight checklist, his fingers moving with practiced efficiency across controls that had been modified beyond recognition. Where traditional fighters relied on mechanical precision, this craft responded to pilot intent interpreted through quantum probability matrices. "Like I'm about to marry physics and see if the honeymoon kills me," he replied, earning a soft laugh from Zara that made something tight in his chest loosen. They'd spent the last 3 days in constant preparation, their professional relationship deepening into something more personal. With each shared meal in the facility cafeteria, each late-night session reviewing quantum theory, "Remember," Zara continued, her voice taking on the focused intensity he'd learned to associate with her deepest concentration. "When the quantum field activates, don't fight the disorientation. Let your consciousness expand to accommodate multiple probability states. Think of it like..." She paused, searching for an analogy that would resonate with his pilot's instincts. "Like flying through a storm where the wind comes from every direction." At once, Marcus finished, settling into the pilot's seat that had been custom-fitted to his physiology. "Trust the instruments even when they contradict each other, because they're all showing different aspects of the same quantum truth." The launch bay's atmosphere evacuation sequence began, external lights shifting from amber to red as the massive doors prepared to open onto the star-filled void. Through his canopy, Marcus could see the distant glint of Nexari scout ships, their formations maintaining the geometric perfection that had made them unbeatable. In every previous engagement, Falcon 77 requesting permission for quantum field activation, Marcus transmitted, his voice steady despite the adrenaline beginning to flood his system. This wasn't like racing, where the worst outcome was a spectacular crash and some bruised pride. Today, he was testing technology that could save humanity or tear him apart at the molecular level. "Permission granted," came Professor Hendricks' voice from Mission Control. "Remember, Marcus, you're not just testing a fighter. You're proving that human adaptability can overcome alien precision. Make us proud." The quantum field generators came online, with a sound like reality tearing at the seams. Marcus felt his consciousness suddenly expand beyond the confines of his physical body, his awareness spreading across multiple probability states simultaneously. The cockpit instruments showed contradictory readings: altitude, velocity, and heading, all displaying different values that somehow felt equally true. "Quantum superposition established," Zara reported, though her voice now seemed to come from several directions at once. "You're existing in 17 different probability states. How's your spatial awareness?" Marcus tested the controls, feeling the fighter respond not just to his physical inputs, but to his intentions themselves. When he thought about turning left, the craft began exploring that possibility before he even moved the stick. When he considered acceleration, the quantum field shifted to accommodate potential velocity changes. "It's like flying in a lucid dream," he replied, his voice strange in his own ears as it emanated from multiple probability versions of himself. I can feel every possible maneuver simultaneously. The launch bay doors opened completely, revealing the operational test zone where 3 Naxari scout ships waited in perfect triangular formation. Their sleek, crystalline hulls reflected the distant sun in geometric patterns that spoke of mathematical obsession carried to artistic extremes. Falcon 7-7, you are cleared for combat engagement. Mission control transmitted. Show us what quantum chaos can do against perfect order. Marcus engaged the main drive, feeling the fighter leap forward through space while simultaneously exploring dozens of potential flight paths. To the Naxari targeting computers, he knew the craft would appear as a probability cloud, a smear of potential positions that conventional weapons couldn't lock onto. The alien ships responded immediately, their formation shifting with mechanical precision as plasma cannons swiveled to track his approach, but their targeting systems, designed for mathematical certainty, struggled to acquire a lock on something that existed in quantum superposition. They're having trouble with target acquisition, Zara observed, her excitement bleeding through the professional detachment in her voice. The quantum field is working exactly as predicted. Their computers are trying to calculate firing solutions for 17 different targets simultaneously. Marcus felt the first plasma barrage pass through space where he might have been if he'd followed a conventional approach vector. Instead, his quantum-shifted consciousness had chosen a flight path that existed only in probability space, weaving between the energy blasts like threading a needle in a hurricane. Beginning attack run, he announced, bringing his weapons systems online. The fighter's armament had been modified to work within the quantum field. Conventional missiles replaced with probability-guided projectiles that could alter their trajectories mid-flight. Based on quantum uncertainty principles, he fired a spread of missiles at the lead Naxari ship, watching as the projectiles split into multiple probability states, each following a different path through space. The alien craft's point defense systems activated, tracking and destroying several of the missile variants, but missing others that existed in quantum states the targeting computers couldn't predict. 2 missiles struck the Naxari scouts' shields, their impact destabilizing the perfect energy matrix that protected the crystalline hull. The alien ship's formation wavered as its systems struggled to compensate for damage patterns that followed no predictable algorithm. Direct hit. Professor Hendrick's voice crackled with triumph. The quantum missiles penetrated their shields because the targeting computers couldn't predict all the possible impact vectors. Marcus pulled into a vertical climb that became a probability spiral, his consciousness spreading across multiple flight paths as the remaining Naxari ships attempted to coordinate their response. Their plasma cannons fired in perfect synchronization, but the energy beams passed through empty space where their computers predicted he should be. "This is incredible," he said, rolling into an attack vector that existed partially outside normal spacetime. "It's like they're playing chess while I'm playing poker. They can't adapt 2 moves that don't follow logical patterns." But even as he spoke, Marcus noticed the alien ships beginning to adjust their tactics. Instead of trying to target his specific position, they started laying down fields of plasma fire, attempting to saturate the probability space he occupied. "They're learning," Zara warned, her voice tight with concern. "Naxari battle computers adapt quickly. You need to finish this before they develop countermeasures." Marcus dove toward the second scout ship, his quantum-enhanced consciousness calculating attack vectors that no conventional pilot could conceive. He fired another spread of probability missiles, but this time the Naxari craft was ready, its defenses tracking multiple potential targets simultaneously. Most of the missiles were intercepted, but one probability variant slipped through, striking the ship's quantum resonance chamber and causing a cascade failure that left it drifting powerless through space. "To down, 1 to go," Marcus reported, but he could feel the strain of existing in quantum superposition beginning to tell. His consciousness felt stretched thin across too many probability states, and occasional bursts of disorientation threatened his spatial awareness. The final Naxari ship had learned from its companion's defeat. Instead of trying to target Marcus directly, it began generating its own probability fields, attempting to match his quantum state with alien technology that operated on entirely different principles. They're using probability manipulation, Zara said, alarm evident in her voice. I'm reading quantum interference patterns. They're trying to collapse your superposition state. Marcus felt it immediately, a strange tugging sensation, as the alien craft attempted to force him back into conventional reality. The multiple probability states that had given him such an advantage began to collapse, his consciousness snapping back toward a single point of existence. Quantum field destabilizing, he reported, fighting to maintain the superposition state that kept him invisible to conventional targeting. They've figured out how to counter the effect, but instead of panic, Marcus felt a familiar rush of competitive excitement. In civilian racing, the best pilots weren't those who flew perfect lines, but those who could adapt when everything went wrong, who could find victory in chaos and uncertainty. Zara, he said, making a decision that felt both terrifying and inevitable. Part 3. The reluctant diplomat. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood before the viewport of the diplomatic shuttle Harmony, watching the Nexari flagship Axiom grow larger against the star field. With each passing moment, the alien vessel defied human aesthetic sensibilities, a crystalline structure that seemed to have been grown rather than built, its faceted surface reflecting light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Geometric perfection carried to an almost religious extreme. Final approach in 12 minutes, announced Captain Torres from the pilot's seat, his voice carefully neutral despite the unprecedented nature of their mission. Still time to reconsider. This, Ambassador, no one would blame you for. For what? Elena interrupted gently, adjusting the diplomatic credentials on her formal jacket. For refusing to attempt the first peaceful contact with an alien species because it might be dangerous? That's exactly when diplomacy matters most. She touched the quantum communicator Zara had designed, a smaller version of the probability engine's interface that would allow real-time translation through quantum entanglement with the Harmony's main computer. The technology was untested for diplomatic applications, but then, everything about this situation was unprecedented. Besides, Elena continued, checking her tablet one final time, we have intelligence now. Marcus proved their systems can be confused, their tactics disrupted. That changes the negotiating position considerably. What she didn't mention was the personal letter tucked into her jacket pocket. Handwritten words from her daughter Sophia, away at university, expressing pride in her mother's courage. Elena had spent 15 years as a military officer before transitioning to diplomatic service, but nothing had prepared her for volunteering to board an alien warship in the hopes of preventing galactic war. The shuttle's communication system chimed with an incoming transmission. Shuttle Harmony, this is Nexari Command Intelligence Keth Zelana. I will be serving as your liaison during the diplomatic proceedings. Elena blinked in surprise. The voice was unmistakably alien harmonics that no human throat could produce, but the English was flawless, and more importantly, the speaker had identified himself rather than remaining anonymous. Acknowledged Intelligence Keth, she replied, deliberately using his title to show respect for Nexari protocol. I am Ambassador Elena Vasquez, representing the Terran Colonial Alliance. I appreciate your willingness to facilitate these discussions. There was a pause before the response came, and Elena thought she detected something like curiosity in the alien voice. Your quantum fighter pilot's tactics were unexpected. Our battle computers are still analyzing the engagement patterns. This suggests your species approaches problems differently than we anticipated. Differently, yes, Elena agreed carefully, but not necessarily incompatibly. That's what we're hoping to explore today, as the shuttle settled into the Axioms docking bay. Elena noted the precision of the mechanical systems, the way every surface and angle seemed calculated for maximum efficiency. But there was something else, subtle imperfections in the crystalline walls, variations in the geometric patterns that suggested individual craftsmanship rather than machine production. The airlock cycled with a harmonic chime that resonated through her bones, and Elena stepped into her first alien environment. The atmosphere was breathable, but felt somehow more than Earth-normal air, charged with exotic particles that made her skin tingle and her thoughts feel sharper. Keth Zilana waited just beyond the airlock, and Elena's first impression was of elegant functionality made manifest, tall and lean, with elongated limbs that moved with fluid precision. His skin possessed a subtle iridescent quality that shifted between silver and pale blue. Most striking were his eyes, larger than human proportions and colored a deep violet that seemed to hold depths of intelligence. "Ambassador Vasquez," he said, inclining his head in what she recognized as a formal greeting. "Welcome aboard the Axiom. I must confess, this is the first time our species have met under circumstances that might be described as diplomatic." Elena smiled, noting that his translator rendered the concept of diplomacy with what sounded like genuine uncertainty. "First times are always awkward. The important thing is that we're both here, trying to find a better solution than mutual destruction." As Keth led her through the ship's corridors, Elena observed the way other Nexari crew members moved with synchronized precision, their actions coordinated like dancers in a complex ballet. But she also noticed how they watched her, not with hostility, but with something that looked remarkably like curiosity. "Your crew seems interested in human behavior," she observed as they passed a group of technicians who paused their work to observe her passage. "We are a species that values understanding," Keth replied, his pace measured and graceful. "Your pilot's quantum tactics have forced us to reconsider certain assumptions about cognitive approaches to problem solving. This has created discussion among our command structure." Elena filed that information away, recognizing the diplomatic importance of admitting uncertainty. "Discussion can be valuable. It suggests flexibility, willingness to adapt." Keth stopped so suddenly that Elena nearly collided with him. He turned to face her fully, his violet eyes studying her with an intensity that was somehow not uncomfortable. "Flexibility," he repeated, as if testing the concept. "Yes, that is precisely what our recent encounters have demonstrated we may lack. Tell me, Ambassador, how does your species maintain social cohesion when individual behavior is so variable?" The question was clearly more than casual conversation, and Elena recognized an opportunity to begin the real diplomatic work. "We've learned that diversity of thought leads to stronger solutions. When everyone thinks the same way, you're vulnerable to the same blind spots. When people approach problems from different angles, you discover possibilities that pure logic might miss." They resumed walking, but Elena sensed a change in Keth's demeanor, less formal protocol, more genuine engagement. The corridor they entered was different from the others, with walls that curved in organic patterns rather than strict geometric lines. "These are my private quarters," Keth explained, noting her obvious interest in the architecture. "I have experimented with alternative design principles. My colleagues find it unusual." Elena stepped into the space and felt her breath catch, where the rest of the ship exemplified crystalline perfection. This room embraced beautiful asymmetry. Curved surfaces flowed into each other, and the lighting created subtle shadows that shifted and danced rather than maintaining uniform illumination. "It's beautiful," she said honestly. "It feels alive." "Yes," Keth agreed, his voice carrying a note of something that might have been relief. "I have studied recordings of human artistic expression, attempting to understand the appeal of imperfection. This room is my attempt to experience, rather than merely analyze." Elena moved to a wall where complex equations were inscribed in flowing Nexari script, but interwoven with them were what looked like fragments of poetry, mathematical beauty expressed in language rather than pure symbols. "You write poetry?" she asked, surprised by this revelation of individual creativity. "I attempt to find harmony between precision and..." Keth paused, searching for words. "Between what is and what could be. Your species appears to excel at this synthesis." Elena felt the diplomatic dynamics shifting, becoming more personal. This wasn't just first contact between species, it was a meeting between individuals who recognized something valuable in each other's approach to existence. "Keth," she said carefully, "what do you personally think about this conflict between our peoples?" The question hung in the air for a long moment before he responded. "I think that a species capable of quantum probability manipulation, combined with instinctive tactical adaptation, represents something our civilization has not encountered before. And I think that our command structure's decision to proceed with full conquest rather than study may be suboptimal. Elena sat down in what appeared to be a chair, though its flowing organic shape adjusted to her human physiology with startling accuracy. Suboptimal is a diplomatic way of saying a terrible mistake. Perhaps, Keth agreed, settling into a chair across from her with movements that somehow managed to be both alien and graceful. But admitting error is difficult when your entire social structure is based on the premise of computational perfection. What if we could propose an alternative? Elena suggested, leaning forward with the intensity that had made her effective in previous negotiations. Not surrender or conquest, but genuine collaboration. Your computational precision combined with human adaptive creativity could achieve things neither species could accomplish alone. Keth's expression shifted in ways Elena was learning to read. As surprise, you would trust us with access to human systems after we arrived as invaders? Trust has to start somewhere, Elena replied, and it usually starts with individuals who are willing to take risks for the possibility of something better. Before Keth could respond, an alarm began sounding throughout the ship, not the harsh klaxons Elena expected, but a harmonic progression that somehow conveyed both urgency and precision. Fleet Command is requesting immediate conference, Keth said, his posture straightening as he resumed his official role. Your presence is required for the formal negotiations. Part 4. The Quantum Entangleth Joint Research Station synthesis hung in the gravitational balance point between Earth and Mars, a marvel of hybrid architecture that defied both human and Nexari design principles. Curved human sections flowed into crystalline Nexari modules, creating a structure that seemed to pulse with life while maintaining mathematical precision. Inside Laboratory 7, Keth Zilana carefully calibrated a quantum resonance chamber while Elena Vasquez reviewed diplomatic protocols on her tablet, their work interrupted by comfortable conversation that had become routine over the past 6 weeks. The harmonic frequency is off by 0.03%, Keth observed, his long fingers dancing across controls that responded to both touch and intention. Human quantum technology operates on intuitive principles that are computational. Models struggle to replicate exactly. Elena looked up from her reading, noting the subtle frustration in his posture that she'd learned to recognize. Maybe that's the point. Zara always said the beauty of quantum mechanics is that it refuses to be perfectly predictable. The 0.03% variation might not be a flaw. It might be the feature that makes the whole system work. Keth paused in his adjustments, turning to face her with the expression she'd come to associate with his moments of breakthrough. Understanding. You're suggesting we incorporate the imprecision deliberately. I'm suggesting, Elena said, setting down her tablet and moving to stand beside him at the control console. That perfection might not always be the goal. Sometimes good enough is actually better than perfect because it leaves room for adaptation. Their shoulders touched as they worked side by side. A casual contact that had developed gradually as their professional partnership deepened into something more personal. Elena was acutely aware of the warmth radiating from Keth's body, the way his bioluminescent markings shifted to warmer hues when he was concentrating, the alien beauty of his features that had become increasingly familiar and dear. Run the test sequence with the variation intact, she suggested. Let's see what happens when we stop trying to eliminate the uncertainty. Keth initiated the sequence, and the quantum resonance chamber came alive with patterns of light that seemed to dance, rather than follow strict geometric progressions. The hybrid technology, part human intuition, part Nexari precision, created effects that neither species could have achieved alone. Remarkable, Keth murmured, his violet eyes reflecting the shifting patterns. The efficiency actually increases when we allow for the uncertainty margin. The system becomes more stable by embracing instability. Elena smiled, watching his face as understanding dawned. It's a very human concept. Sometimes the strongest structures are the ones that can bend without breaking. The laboratory door chimed with the harmonic sequence that announced a visitor, and Dr. Sarah Kim entered carrying data tablets and wearing the expression of someone who'd made an important discovery. The Joint Council wants a progress report, she announced without preamble. Both sides are getting impatient for results. The military hardliners on Earth think we're moving too slowly, and apparently some faction in the Nexari command structure thinks this whole collaboration is a waste of resources. Elena exchanged glances with Keth, recognizing the political pressure they'd both been feeling. The temporary ceasefire that had allowed for the creation of synthesis was fragile, held together by mutual curiosity and the promise of technological breakthroughs that might benefit both species. What kind of timeline are they demanding? Elena asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. 72 hours for a functional prototype, Dr. Kim replied. Something dramatic enough to prove the concept works, but practical enough to justify continued cooperation. Keth's bioluminescent markings shifted to cooler blues, a sign of stress that Elena had learned to recognize. The hybrid quantum drive we've been developing requires at least 2 more weeks of calibration. Rushing the process could result in catastrophic system failure. Or, Elena said thoughtfully, it could result in exactly the kind of beautiful chaos that makes the whole thing work. Remember what happened with Marcus and the quantum fighter? The greatest breakthrough came when he stopped trying to fight the uncertainty and started using it. Dr. Kim looked between them with the expression of someone who recognized romantic tension disguised as scientific collaboration. I'll leave you two to work out the technical details. But remember 72 hours. After that, the politicians take over from the scientists. After she left, Elena and Keth stood in silence for a moment, the weight of expectation settling between them. They had been working toward this moment for weeks, developing not just hybrid technology but a hybrid relationship that transcended species boundaries. Elena, Keth said quietly, his voice carrying harmonics that the translator couldn't render, but that conveyed emotional depth. What we're attempting, it's more than just technology integration. We're trying to prove that fundamental differences can become strengths rather than obstacles. She turned to face him fully, noting the way the laboratory's lighting caught the subtle iridescence of his skin, the alien elegance of his features that had become so familiar she sometimes forgot. How extraordinary this situation was, are we? Still talking about quantum drives? She asked softly. No, he admitted, his hand reaching out to touch hers with tentative gentleness. We are not. The contact sent an unexpected current through Elena's nervous system, not unpleasant, but definitely alien, as if Keth's touch carried electromagnetic properties that human skin wasn't designed to process. But beneath the strangeness was something unmistakably warm and genuine. Keth, she said, her diplomatic training warring with personal feelings she hadn't expected to develop. You understand that this complicates everything, not just the project, but the entire diplomatic situation. I understand, he replied, his thumb tracing across her knuckles with movements that were becoming less alien and more simply intimate. But I also understand that some discoveries are worth the complications they create. Before Elena could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station, not the harsh klaxons of human emergency systems or the harmonic progressions of Nexari alerts, but something hybrid, urgent but musical. Incoming transmission from Earth. Command, announced the station's AI in a voice that blended human inflection with Nexari harmonic undertone. S Priority Alpha, all personnel to emergency stations. Elena and Keth rushed to the communication center, where the main screen showed Admiral Harrison's grim face, alongside Commander Vexil's crystalline features, an unprecedented joint transmission that immediately signaled crisis, long range. Sensors have detected a massive fleet approaching from the outer system, Admiral Harrison announced without preamble. Not Nexari vessels, something else entirely. Estimated arrival in 18 hours, Commander Vexil's translator rendered, his words with unusual urgency. Unknown technology signatures, ships that do not conform to any design principles in our databases. They are broadcasting a single message on all frequencies. Submit to the collective or face extinction. Elena felt ice form in her stomach as the implications became clear. A third faction. While we've been fighting each other, something else has been watching, waiting. The Joint Council has made a decision. Admiral Harrison continued. Operation Unity is now active. All collaborative projects are to be accelerated for immediate deployment. Humanity and the Nexari will face this threat together, or not at all. As the transmission ended, Elena looked at Keth and saw her own understanding reflected in his violet eyes. They had 72 hours to prove that human-Nexari cooperation could work. But now those hours might determine not just the future of their relationship, but the survival of both species. The quantum drive prototype, Keth said, his voice steady despite the crisis. If we can complete it, prove that hybrid technology works, then we give both our species a reason to keep working together, Elena finished. Even after this immediate threat is resolved, they worked through the next 18 hours with desperate intensity. Their professional collaboration deepened by personal stakes that neither had expected. When the project began, the quantum drive took shape under their combined efforts: human intuition guiding Nexari precision, Elena's diplomatic flexibility complementing Keth's scientific rigor, harmonic resonance approaching optimal frequency. Keth reported as the hybrid drive came online for its first full power test. But the quantum uncertainty margins are still fluctuated outside predicted parameters. Elena watched the readouts, recognizing patterns that reminded her of Marcus's flight data from the quantum fighter trials. What if that's not a problem to solve? What if it's the solution itself? She moved to the control console, her fingers finding the manual adjustment controls that could fine-tune the quantum field. Generators, trust me on this. Sometimes the most stable configuration is the one that looks unstable from the outside. Keth's hand covered hers on the controls, and Elena felt that same electromagnetic current flowing between them, but stronger now, as if their physical contact was somehow synchronizing their nervous systems. Together, he said, his voice carrying harmonics of determination and something deeper. Together, they engaged the quantum drive, and the effect exceeded even their Mo. Part 5, Hearts in Superpositioned Bridge of the Hybrid Battleship. Convergence thumbed with quantum harmonics. As for figures stood around the central command hologram, their faces illuminated by tactical displays showing the approaching collective fleet. Zara Voss monitored quantum field generators that existed partially in normal space and partially in probability matrices, while Marcus Chen reviewed flight plans that defied conventional physics. Elena Vasquez coordinated diplomatic channels between human and Nexari forces, and Keth Zelana calibrated hybrid weapons systems that combined mathematical precision with intuitive chaos. Collective ships are maintaining perfect formation, Marcus reported, his pilot's instincts analyzing the enemy approach vectors. No variation, no adaptation to changing conditions. They're flying like machines. Because they are machines, Keth replied, his violet eyes reflecting the tactical displays. Analysis of their transmissions suggests complete unity of thought. No individual consciousness, only collective purpose. Zara looked up from her quantum engineering station, her face showing the exhaustion of someone who had spent the last week pushing the boundaries of theoretical physics into practical application. The hybrid quantum drives are performing beyond specifications, but we're still outnumbered 50-1. Even with our technological advantages, we don't need to outfight them, Elena interrupted, studying diplomatic intelligence reports with the focused intensity that had made her effective in previous negotiations. We need to outthink them. The collective operates on pure logic, perfect coordination. But perfect coordination has a weakness. Marcus moved to stand behind Zara's chair, his hand resting on her shoulder in a gesture of support that had become natural over their weeks of collaboration. What kind of weakness? Single point of failure, Elena explained, calling up analysis data on the main display. If every ship is perfectly coordinated, then disrupting that coordination should create system-wide chaos. Keth approached Elena, their personal relationship having evolved into something that transcended species boundaries. Through shared crisis and mutual trust, the quantum resonance network we developed for the drive systems could theoretically be adapted for communications. Disruption. Theoretically, Zara emphasized, her fingers dancing across quantum probability calculations. But the power requirements would drain our entire fleet's energy reserves. We get one shot, and if it doesn't work, then we improvise, Marcus said with the confident grin. that had carried him through impossible flying situations. Improvisation is what humans do best. That's what saved us from the Nexari. And it's what's going to save us from the collective. Admiral Harrison's voice crackled through the communication system, joining the tactical planning from the human command ship Unity. All vessels report ready status. Hybrid squadrons are in position, but I want to emphasize this is untested. Technology in actual combat conditions. All technology is untested until you test it, Elena replied. Her diplomatic experience having taught her the value of confident leadership in uncertain situations. The question is whether we trust each other enough to make it work. Commander Vexil's harmonic voice joined the conference from the Nexari flagship Symmetry. Joint tactical analysis indicates optimal engagement range in 14 minutes. Quantum disruption network must be activated before they achieve weapons lock. Zara initiated the final calibration sequence, her consciousness extending into the quantum fields that connected all the hybrid ships in the combined fleet. Through the probability matrices, she could feel the presence of every other quantum engineer, their minds linked by technology that had seemed impossible just months ago. Quantum network coming online, she reported, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. But I need pilots who can fly in quantum superposition to act as network nodes. Marcus was already moving toward the launch bay. Phoenix Squadron is standing by. Modified fighters with quantum field generators. I'm coming with you, Elena said, her diplomatic protocols warring with personal concern. If this is humanity's last stand, I want to be in the fight, not coordinating from safety. Diplomatic personnel are not cleared for combat operations. Admiral Harrison protested through the calm. With respect, Admiral, Elena replied, already heading toward the launch bay. With Keth beside her, diplomatic personnel created the alliance. That made this defense possible. We're seeing it through. The launch bay of the Convergence bustled with controlled chaos as pilots performed final checks on fighters that seemed to shimmer with barely contained possibility. The hybrid technology had evolved rapidly under combat pressure, creating aircraft that existed partially in normal space and partially in probability fields. Zara helped Marcus into his quantum-enhanced flight suit, their personal relationship having deepened through shared crisis into something that transcended mere attraction. The neural interface has been upgraded, she explained, connecting quantum field generators to his combat gear. You'll be able to feel the entire network through your consciousness. What about you? Marcus asked, his helmet in his hands as he studied her face with the intensity of someone memorizing beloved features. Before a dangerous mission, I'll be monitoring from the command center, Zara replied, then surprised herself by adding, but part of my consciousness will be in the quantum field with you. We're entangled now, remember? Quantum mechanics doesn't recognize the difference between technology and emotion. Before Marcus could respond, Elena approached in her own modified flight suit, Keth beside her in gear that had been adapted for Nexari physiology. The sight of human and alien preparing to fly together would have been unthinkable weeks ago. But crisis had a way of making the impossible seem routine. Elena, Marcus said, you know you don't have to. Yes, I do, she interrupted firmly. This alliance isn't just about technology or tactics. It's about trust between individuals from different species. Someone needs to prove that trust holds up under fire. Keth's bioluminescent markings shifted to warm golds as he checked Elena's equipment. With careful attention, the quantum field will link our consciousness temporarily. You will experience reality as I do, and I will experience it as you do. This level of intimacy between our species has never been attempted. Elena smiled, her diplomatic mask dropping to reveal genuine affection. Then we'll be the first. Someone has to be. The launch sequence began with hybrid fighters streaming from multiple ships, their quantum fields creating probability clouds that confused collective targeting systems. Marcus felt his consciousness expand as the quantum network came online, connecting him not just to the other pilots, but to Zara's engineering expertise, Elena's diplomatic intuition, and Keth's mathematical precision. Network established, Zara reported from the command center, her voice reaching him through both conventional communications and quantum entanglement. You should be feeling the connection now. Marcus gasped as his awareness suddenly included perspectives from across the entire fleet, human pilots, bringing creative chaos to their flight patterns. Next, RE pilots contributing mathematical precision to targeting solutions, and hybrid systems creating effects that neither species could have achieved alone. "This is incredible," Elena's voice came through the network, her consciousness linked to Keth's as their fighters flew in perfect synchronization. "Despite coming from completely different design philosophies, I can feel how you think, how you process spatial relationships, and I can feel your intuitive leaps," Keth replied, his harmony of amazement evident even through the translation matrix. "The way you reach conclusions without logical progression, it's beautiful." The collective fleet opened fire with weapons that created geometric patterns of destruction, their tactics flawless but predictable. The hybrid squadrons responded with flight patterns that existed in quantum superposition, appearing to be everywhere and nowhere simultaneously, initiating quantum disruption protocol. Zara announced, her consciousness stretching across the network to coordinate effects that required precise timing across multiple probability states. "All units, prepare for reality distortion." Marcus felt the quantum fields around the entire fleet suddenly synchronize, creating a massive probability wave that struck the collective formation. Like a storm of pure uncertainty, the enemy ships, designed for perfect coordination, suddenly found themselves receiving contradictory information from their own sensors. "It's working," Elena reported as collective vessels began firing on each other, their targeting computers confused by probability fields that made every ship appear to be in multiple locations simultaneously. Their perfect coordination is becoming their weakness. But even as the hybrid fleet pressed their advantage, Marcus noticed adaptation beginning in the collective formation. "They're learning," he warned, adjusting tactics to compensate for quantum uncertainty. "Then we adapt faster," Zara replied, her engineering intuition creating new quantum configurations in real time. "Elena, can you establish communication with their central intelligence? Attempting contact now." Elena responded, her diplomatic protocols engaging even in the middle of combat. "Unknown vessels. This is Ambassador Elena Vasquez of the Terran Nexari Alliance. We seek dialogue, not destruction." The response came as pure,